All right, Chris, thank you again. Sorry, we're running a little behind schedule, but it's great to have you back on the podcast. I think you're our first repeat guest. So I don't know if that means anything, but we wanted to catch up with you. You know, obviously you had your event where the whole grand goals thing went down, which was super cool. It was also really cool to see you get some recognition for it on, was that Fox News that did the bid on you?
Yeah. It ended up in a few spots. It was on Yahoo News and Men's Fitness. I don't know. Anyway, online. But yeah, they just ran a piece last night on our local news here in Oregon.
That's so awesome. So grand goals, you've been talking about it for a while, but for those people listening who don't know, maybe they know, your goal is to be the first person to do reps in both squat and deadlift with 1,000 pounds. Is that the whole idea of grand goals, or is there some sort of larger meaning that represents?
There's definitely a larger meaning behind it. So a little context behind it, but I've been competing for about 16 years and set a number of records, not as many as as Steph, but I don't know how many people do that many records. But at that point, I've been moving along in my career and lifting, and I was just reaching a point of doing a lot of transitions in my life as a whole. And I decided it was time to take a step away from the platform after that length of time. I've been lifting for 25 years or so at that point. And I really wanted to put some meaning behind it for me. And so I came up with this idea. It's something I've been thinking about for a long time, as doing 1,000-pound deadlift and 1,000-pound squat have always been some long-term goals. And so I came up with this grand goals campaign, which was also tied to the launch of really my business, in the fact that, like I said, I was going through a number of life changes and wanted to put meaning and purpose behind what I was doing. And I felt that I'd done enough on the platform that I didn't really need to prove myself anymore there. I've been, I'm not just an internet lifter. I've been competing for a long time at a high level. And so I figured I'm okay with not really setting records anymore and just doing what I'm passionate about, and also trying to inspire people to do things that they never thought they were possible of. And also just trying to, at the same time, pushing the limits to such an extreme level, because I do have, I've been lifting so long, I've got a history of injuries and things like that, to really show people I actually wrote an article on this a number of years ago. I think it's on Elite FTS, but that you're not as broken as that you think that you are. That we can, if you know how to move, you know how to recover, and a lot of this can kind of go into pain science and other stuff as well, which we probably don't need to dive into here, but that we can move through this and still perform phenomenal feats. You don't have to be the person that is, I'm the guy with bad knees, I'm the guy with a broken back, sure. And so on. So that is like two key cornerstone pieces. And then there's a couple others. And the second one is a learning experience for me. I really believe in continual learning. And when I put myself in this point of doing these really extreme things where I'm on the verge of, falling apart or injuring myself, and my whole platform is about teaching people how not to get injured. But you learn so much when you're on that edge about what works and what doesn't. I could sit there and practice something for 6 months, a year, and go, oh, hey, this little piece is working and that one isn't. But when you're on that, just like that cusp of falling apart, because I've got to do this again, and 2 days ago I could barely move, and I got to get there. You find out really fast what's working, what's not, right? And then the final one is, hey, if I'm doing this and I'm building my own, online platform, to use that to promote and raise awareness around the charities that I believe in. So every one of these, there's been some interim goals, because there's things I've done besides that in the interim, but it's all about building my tolerance to axial load. So there's been other squatting and deadlifting, sometimes doing it multiple days a row, things like that. And every one of those I've paired with a charity that I believe in. Now, if you know my backstory, you'll understand where a lot of these charities come from, but they're a lot of times for, housing for homeless mothers, children that have been sexually abused, Special Olympics. And then recently, my business partner's grandson had a battle with cancer for a year. He's in remission now. And so the more recent ones have been around research for child cancer. And so it's been really great. So there's 4 like key components there. And so I think it pairs really well with the name Grand 1,000, but also grand, just kind of over the top. And yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's just gym lifts. So I'm not like trying to say it's something that it's not, like let's understand there's a big difference between doing something in that fashion and being a competitive lifter. And I don't want to say that people, like, if you want to go prove yourself, you need to do that. I did it for 16 years straight before I decided, okay, I'm just going to do what I want to do now. I'm officially retiring, and I'm not going to say my lifts aren't what they are. Like, they're gym lifts, but it's still over the top and pushing the body and the mind to those limits. And that's where, that whole grand goals campaign is. So it covers a lot of things. And it's also like, I've been working on it for 4 years. It is my big final. That was my big final. Like, at this point, it is all about, movement, recovery, maintaining myself, health, longevity. I'm a father with 3 kids. The oldest is going to be a teenager here in another year. So it's time for me to focus on that, plus my businesses, and also be able to invest more time in education and other things that I want to do. So definitely not walking away from strength and fitness industry or lifting myself by any means, but I'm not going to be trying to push and get, an 1100 squat, or, what's the next thing behind that. And so that's the difference. I turned 43 a few days after this last one. And which is interesting. I think I know when I did the 1,000-pound deadlift, I still am the oldest person that's ever deadlifted 1,000 pounds, and I believe I'm the oldest person that's ever squatted 1,000 pounds. So
you're also the lightest person to ever squat 900 pounds. Is that correct?
I'm definitely the lightest person to ever do the 1,000-pound deadlift. I haven't gone back and checked if I'm the lightest person to do a 1,000-pound squat yet. So I think Zahir or Eric made a 275-pound class in one of those. So I don't think I get to say that. So, but I could be. I don't know. I just haven't looked. Again, a little bit. It's hard because I'm not talking about official records. It's like for the squatting, I was able to do an official record for the deadlift because I did that it was the world championship for the APA powerlifting. So we had all the judges there, and as a sumo deadlift, nobody had ever done that before. So it was an exhibition with straps, but for the Guinness World Record, the conventional deadlift is also done with straps because they qualify strongman records. So my 1,000-pound deadlift is recorded, just the single, not the multitude of reps. But I was able to get that one in the books, but the squat, not so. So because we've got so it's gym lifts. How do you track those? And it's just like knowing, like, hey, Captain Kirk did it for a double. I believe Ray Williams did it for a double. Gosh darn, one of your
Dan Bell.
Dan Bell has hit it for 4 reps. Seems like there's somebody else I'm missing in there as well that did it for a double. Dan's the only one that's done more than me on the repetition. So he did 4 total. Dan's a hell of a lifter. God, that guy's just incredible. But all incredible lifters. So yeah, I certainly don't want to take anything away from anybody else. But the big piece of why I also wanted to do it for both the squat and the deadlift was I wanted to demonstrate I'm not a specialist. I'm not just a person with the really long arms or whatever. Like, right. I built to do this. Like, and that's where I really wanted I felt I could differentiate, because there's phenomenal people, but being able to do both of those at that that freaky level. And that's what took me so long to do. I mean, well, heck, I've been lifting for 32 years now. So wow. 1988, I believe, is when I started. So
that's longer than Steph and I have been alive.
I love so many things about, I'm just writing them down because I didn't want to forget about them, but I love so many things about what you said, especially, and something that I wanted to touch on was you mentioned a lot about how, hey Caesar, can you lower the volume on my headphones? I'm like going deaf. You mentioned that, you don't want to make it seem like just lifting weights is, this sort of like incredible thing. You don't want to, I hear that so much, especially on my platform. Oh, you're just lifting weights. Like it's not that special. It's not a big deal. But I think it definitely has a deeper meaning, and only people who push themselves to that limit can understand that what that makes you feel and the meaning that it has for yourself.
Yeah.
The fact that you're coming into the gym every day, you're showing up when it hurts, when it doesn't hurt, when you don't want to, and when it's raining, snowing, every day you're showing up for years for this goal that you have, for this vision that you have. And I think people get too caught up on the actual action that you're doing, which is, just lifting weights, that they miss the important meaning and the important kind of like essence and story of getting to that point. Mm-hmm. The relationship you had with pain, the fact that you were showing people that age is not a limiting factor, the fact that previous injuries aren't a limiting factor. I mean, there's so much good stuff in that story that I think people need to think about.
And also the fact that there was a much larger, purpose for what you're doing. Like the inspirational aspect of it, of course, is huge, but also you're doing it to help raise money for charity. So I think that it's a super noble cause all around.
Speaking of that, I'll just throw out the pitch again. So, Grand Goals shirts are still on our website. 100% of proceeds go to the Leukemia and Lymphoma Foundation, and you can also donate directly via the site there as well if you don't want to have a shirt. So, so anyway, throw that out there.
That's awesome. Yeah, we'll throw the link in the show notes so people can contribute if they want.
But yeah, Steph, you're spot on. Like it is. The essence of the day of, it's just lifting, but it's a way of expressing these other things. And it could be anything, whatever a person's passionate about that allows them to push and realize, it's way more than physical. It's mental and emotional. And there's so many things that people can learn from the gym that are lessons in life. And I try to articulate this a lot because sometimes you see like these people that are really successful in the gym, and then they don't realize if I just did that same thing in my life, like I've got to have a plan. Oh, well, this is actually project management. Like I've got to sit here and plan out, okay, this is what 6 months from now, this is where I want to be. Next year, this is where I want to be. Here's the steps that I got to do. Oh, here's the discipline that I've got to have to put in place. Nothing works out right. So I've got to work around and overcome obstacles as I'm going through it, reevaluate, reassess, and then continue to drive that back to my, like, this is like, that's successful business. That's successful life. Right. And then the impact of, staying strong when, cause you're going to get things thrown at you that are going to want to make you stop, and you're going to want to stop at times. And you've got to stay focused on that. And that's where the mental and the emotional factors start coming in, and, sticking with the plan. And that's like when I said, to show people they can accomplish more than they think that they can. Because I put these principles in place in the business world, and I've been very successful with that through the years with leading people in that direction by challenging them and putting things in front of them that scared them. And same thing, like you sign up for a competition your first time, you're scared of that, but you stick to it and you come through it. And what happens when somebody goes through their first competition? Boom, all of a sudden, like this, oh my God, I'm so elated. I've actually gone through and done this, even if, and the impact of that has on their self-confidence, and then where they move through next beyond that. Right. And we see this happen all the time, but you also see the converse of it. If you're, a trainer and you're working, maybe you see some really successful people in life and they go into the gym and they don't put like hey, the things that you've done, like if you have the discipline and you stick with the plan, and you're not gonna look amazing or be moving great weights in 3 months. Like it's a process, and it's okay. And we work through this, and you're gonna get there. These are all steps that you've got to follow in that. And so it's something that I really try to articulate to people on one side or the other, because it's the essence of it is the same things that you need to put in place in all aspects of your life, or the other way, bring into the gym so you can have that same success instead of, jumping around and falling for the next gimmick. And, because this didn't work for the last 4 weeks, I need to go and never making progress. My buddies called. It's Friday afternoon. I had a workout plan, but they want to have 5 o'clock happy hour. That sounds more fun. It's like every week I'm not making progress because you're missing, it's over and over, same stuff. And some people can't connect those dots. And it's really, if you want to do things phenomenal, you've got to focus on it. You got to make this a priority and understand where that priority fits with your other priorities, so you can do it successfully, and then have the discipline to walk that and be okay with the fact that I'm not always going to be moving forward. That's part of the process. I'm going to run into obstacles, and but I'm going to keep driving forward because this is important to me. Mm-hmm. So sorry.
Can we talk a little bit about setbacks and roadblocks and kind of how you navigate through that? Because I feel like personally, I'm curious, because I'm approaching a point in my powerlifting career, my athletic career, where I'm starting to encounter a lot of those roadblocks, and progress is really slow, if almost inexistent at this point.
Yeah. Sometimes it's years. Like I reflect back, I'm like, God, I was in the same spot a couple years ago. This is frustrating. Right?
Exactly. Or sometimes I feel like I'm getting worse.
And getting worse. I'll give an example. If anybody followed my training log, there was I was having phenomenal success, and then about 6 weeks out, and I didn't even post all of them because one of them, the first time it happened, I just said it was around a deload week. I worked up and I passed out with 800 pounds on the bar. Okay, guys luckily got it back in the rack. And I'm like, okay, well, this week's the deload week. All right.
Forced.
That really messed with my head. But it comes down to the core thing, knowing and having the confidence. I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to find a way around this. The next week I came in, and I don't remember the exact weight, but I basically passed out again. And then that continued. Like then the next week after that, I came in and I was doing a lot of work trying to figure out what's going on. So we're looking at, I'm reaching out to everyone that I can. There's people going, hey, this is a problem with, androgen receptors being depleted, which is going to have, impact on adrenal gland, which is not going to fire up. So your heart rate's not going to come up. Your blood pressure is going to drop. Okay. So there's a whole, biochemical part. Okay. Here's what we need to do. We need to add some, some supplements that, anti-cortisol agents and things like that. Anyway, goes on and on. Start looking at, anyway, I don't need to go into the details. Every week is just like this, like trying to figure out, and I think I've got it. And then I go in, and the next time it's like, well, I can hit singles, but I'm supposed to be doing triples right now. But after the first rep, I'm falling apart. So anyway, it's like this all the way up until I finally have like 2 semi-good workouts right before. So the last 2 weeks, I actually hit my numbers, but one of them was a deload session. So I didn't really have my confidence up, but I was still actually struggling with like being able to breathe under the bar. Cause now I'd gone a month without doing anything more than basically singles under the bar. So I'm like, okay, my strength is up. I'm not having issues. It ended up being, I had some tension in my left trap. And my normal assessment protocol for a left trap or any trap issue, my shoulder mobility has actually been really phenomenal lately. And normally if my shoulder mobility is fine, I don't start looking at the muscles that would have an effect on it, such as trap. Turned out there was some tension. It wasn't affecting my shoulder mobility, and it was shutting off my carotid artery. So I was losing I was losing blood to the brain and passing out. Wow. And so finally worked through and resolved that.
Well, what did
but
you do
now
to
I
fix
haven't
that?
been breathing under the bar with 1,000-pound load. And I was still struggling those last couple of workouts with trying to figure that, get that. So, the last couple of weeks, I'm sitting there doing a lot of work on things that would resolve that. And I walk into the final day that I'm going to do this. And I have to do it that day because basically the gym's going to be shut down any day. I can't perform. I'm not going to be able to have spotters around. I can't continue with my training because same reason, we're in the midst of this. I have to have a team. It's not going to happen. I have to do it now, and I can't come back and do this later. Like this whole process took way too much of a toll on me. I'm not going to come back next year and walk through another year of training to try to get there. It's either now or never. And so it's like, well, is it going to happen or not? And the point of that is like, just in all of it is just having the confidence that I've had a number of wins before my whole life. Here's the things that I've overcome when I thought everything was going to fall apart, and just having that confidence that to do it and keep pushing and investigating and knowing that I can overcome this. It's going to take more than physical strength. Like I've got to outsmart it. I've got to outwill it. I've got to reach to everybody I know that can have a potential, impact on this. I was flying people in that were experts in different areas to work on different avenues, from acupuncture to different, physical therapy, so on, like people that I really believe in that can have a different eye on it to figure this out. Like I've got to have a way. And just that whole mentality of just it'd be so easy to let this stuff overcome me. Mm-hmm. and let it win. And just the minorest giving in, I wouldn't have got there. It had completely fallen apart in the last month. But without that confidence, you wouldn't do the work and just keep being driven. Like there must be a way. That didn't work. Let's try another way. That didn't. Let's keep working at it until we can get there. And then, your other thing about, hey, I'm reaching a stalling point in training and things like that. It's that there's points and things where you've got to, it's such a long process. Like this is what I tell people when we reach that is lifting is not NASCAR. It doesn't happen at 200 miles an hour. And there's parts of your career when it does, but that's not how it works long term. And it's putting those things in place, and again, just continuing to drive and work towards it, and having that long term look at it. Long term look, but always be focused on what do I have to do right now? Because when you start getting like this compounding of a million different things going on, or you're looking too far in the future, when you find yourself looking out there and it's overwhelming, the best step to do is actually at that time too, is just pull it back and focus on what do I have to do today? And if I know I'm doing the steps and I have the confidence, if I'm working the plan, I'm going to get there. So having that long-term vision, but being so focused on today, the actions, because that's all I can do right now is, maybe the rehab work that I've got planned tomorrow, or the session I've got focused on today. And if you get too far out there in your mind, that overwhelming sensation will take over. It will just destroy you, because it can be too much.
Yeah. I love what you said too about just figuring out a way, because I think, the best athletes, or really the people who are the best at anything they do, have the ability to perform under pressure. And that only really comes with the confidence you learn from, setting a goal or setting a deadline and then having to perform at a particular time.
You've got to have a history of wins to build the confidence, right? And now you've got to use that history of wins and confidence for now in that moment when I need it. And just being, it sounds silly, but like, when I'm in those moments and I look up and I'm questioning myself, and and I'm uncertain, I'm in this state of my mind where I'm weak and I'm not ready. And I think that everything's going to just fall apart on me. It's just, looking inward or looking in the mirror and just reminding myself, this is who I am. I'm sorry, it's going to come across a little, some people may take this the wrong way, but I'm motherfucking Chris Duffin. Okay. I got this. And it's really that I am like that, not just the normal, like positive affirmations, but like do it with you've got to put power in your voice to hear yourself. And so that I'm motherfucking part is actually really an important, like whatever words, don't use those words, or maybe you can, but like take a positive affirmation, but put some freaking power behind it. And then you'll believe it. You'll start believing it and gain the confidence. Like speak it with power and confidence.
Yeah, conviction is everything. I mean, and I've seen it with so many athletes, but obviously I get the closest look into, Stefis training and performance. So I've seen her so many times, a few weeks out, even a week out from competition, and it just seems like everything's falling apart.
Falling apart, man. It just, you're second guessing everything in the world when that happens. Like it's I don't know how to describe it, but somebody will say something like slightly negative or whatever, you're just like, oh man, it just keeps piling on. And
you're having like an existential crisis.
I'm a train wreck. 2 weeks out of a meet, I'm a train wreck.
But you always pull it together, and like I said, most top performers in anything they do. So
I didn't know whether I was going to be a success until I loaded the weight on that bar and started moving the day of. And I'm like, oh yeah, I fucking got this. I got this.
So what's training going to look like for you now? I mean, you've had, obviously you're doing something this extreme takes a ton of not only physical energy in the gym, but it's got to consume a huge portion of your mental and emotional time and energy as well. So are you looking to, train for health? Are you looking to, are you still pursuing certain strength achievements? Is there going to be a shift in how you spend your time? I'm just curious about the whole thing.
Yeah. So it's definitely going to be focused on health and longevity. One of the drivers to make sure I got this done, I've got some health issues, some autoimmune disease and things that make this really challenging for me to stay in this really heightened state. My body doesn't respond well. It doesn't switch back into the parasympathetic state very well. When I turn on sympathetic and everybody sees the intensity and stuff, I stay there. So it means I don't sleep well. My digestion doesn't work well. And then that starts having an effect on all sorts of things with my body, my blood work. And as I've gotten older, that gets worse. Feeds into some narcolepsy issues and things as well. So it has a pretty big impact on my life. And so it's definitely like something I had to do also. But yeah, health and longevity, and also trying to create a little bit more time. So I want to be more efficient with my training, and have it leave me feeling refreshed when I'm done. So my view is I get into my work day, and again, I haven't gotten there yet because of everything that's going on in the world right now. But I can come in and hit a 45, 60-minute workout to start out the day and walk away from it feeling refreshed and energized to be able to take on all the tasks that I need to for the day. So I may end up in the process having to lose a little bit of muscle. I'm not sure. I'm dropping weight now. I've already dropped about 20 pounds in the last 3-4 weeks since the event. Wow. So I usually stabilize around 250 pounds. I was 281 the morning of. So if I ate and stuff, I was probably close to 285 when I did the lift. But I'm thinking for health and longevity, I might need to get down to like 230 and 240, which might cause, I might have to make that call, but it's going to depend a little bit on my health markers and stuff. That's really going to be the driver. The goal isn't a specific body weight, a specific leanness. It is a specific level of health and my ability to move in this world. Like, hey, if I want to go for a hike or go 4-wheeling or chop some wood, am I feeling good or am I feeling bogged down? And so that's going to be the driver for me is health markers, how I'm feeling and how I can move and be in the world. And unfortunately, 280, you could be lean and still not be healthy. So getting that figured out, and then really focusing on some long-term issues, trying to make some progress with like I said, I do have an injury history. Some of that I can't work around too much because it's like bone on bone issues and things. But staying mobile, looking good, and being able to produce a lot of content related around a movement and training. And so I don't have a specific answer, but that's my picture in my head. I did a little bit of a test the other day. I threw it up on Instagram, and I actually I had to be a test because I'm not really big into stretching and stuff like that, but I'm not too far away from like doing the splits and in the overhead position. My shoulders are doing really great because honestly, I haven't been doing upper body work. And so my most significant issue right now is just my arms, which I've had surgery on both of them, and I have really limited range of motion. It actually it does affect my life a lot because I can't eat well. There's a lot of things I can't do very well. Beard's nice because I don't have to shave, because shaving is problematic. My arms just don't work all the way anymore. So like I said, I've had surgery on both of them, but I think I can still clean up some of it. It feels like bone on bone restriction. But I think that there's some limitations due to tension and, that those fascial lines and other stuff that I think I can make some more progress than what I'm seeing right now. So it's kind of focused on some of that stuff. As a whole, though, I'm feeling pretty good. I think a lot of it's just going to be getting into the right level of, body weight and leanness, and then maintaining where I'm at, which, given I just came out of a massive strength cycle of, pushing those things. And obviously I wasn't working on, like I said, stretching or opening my hips or things like that when you're handling those kinds of loads every week, because it's not like I want to weaken or potentiate any, potential problems, with like stretching my adductors before, working on those splits before going to do a squat is not a good idea. So,
well, it's amazing that you were able to go out of a strength cycle where you peaked at repping 1,000 pounds in squat to almost being able to do the splits. And it's actually interesting because I think I just saw you post just recently saying squatting doesn't make you tight. Squatting like shit makes you tight. Do you want to expand on that a little bit?
I would like to spend some time on that, because there's a lot of people that are taking, I posted that twice and I've taken a lot of flack on it because people think I'm saying stretching is bad, don't do it. Which would be the same thing as, saying, doing soft tissue work is bad. I'm like, I sell soft tissue tools. Like, people understand, like, but the goal is I don't want you doing that stuff if you don't have to. Right. And here's the thing. People want to jump to fixes, and they go, I have to do this because, like, if you lift heavy, you got to do your mobility work. Well, it's not a balance. It's not a have to, right? So yes, there are times you have to do that stuff. And I call it triage work, right? Because if I can't get my shoulder in an overhead position, I've got to go open it up if I want to do overhead presses, or even if I want to squat and not really be jacking up my shoulder or throwing into extension and compromising my spinal position, right? Mm-hmm. So there's times that you have to do that. But why do you have to do those things? Is the question I'm trying to ask people and get people to go, okay, if I look at my movement and, just simple statement. If you move like shit, what happens if you're not using everything correctly? The body wants to protect, those joints. It starts tightening the tissue around a particular joint, and you start getting limitation of range of motion. Okay. Guess what? My elbows are shot because I benched like shit for a number of years. Okay. It's not because I didn't do stretch. Like, yes, that could have mitigated, but it's a balance of, like, you could lift heavy and cause problems and always be adding fixes, or you could fix what you're doing with your lifting and not have to do the other piece of it. Right. Now, we're never perfect. So there's always going to be some issues that are going to pop up. And another part could be training too. And I didn't really address that in the post. Like, if you're pushing past the limits of what your body's going to be able to recover from, and accumulating more fatigue than you're able to recover from, you're going to have some issues come and develop as well. So, and this is based on Tim Gabbitt's work, which is actually shows that 80% of most injuries are actually a result of your training program, not moving bad.
Yeah, load greater than tissue tolerance, like you always say, right? That's where injuries come into play.
Yeah. So I'm just trying to drive people to look at what you're doing, look at your training program, look at how you're moving, and don't always be thinking that the fix is I got to do 10 mobility exercises before I go train. And if I don't do that, the reason I'm hurting is because I didn't do my mobility work. I'm saying, no, it's because of the root issue with your training. Okay. Right. Either your training plan or your movement or something related to what you're doing in life is going to be driving that dysfunction. And yes, here's some fixes. This is why people go to physical therapy. But in the real, you shouldn't, I'm speaking to a physical therapist here, but so you could correct me where I'm wrong here, Steph. But it shouldn't be a requirement that everybody has to go to a physical therapist to resolve issues if we do things correctly first and we're able to adapt to it.
Absolutely.
And respond. Yeah. So that's all I'm doing is trying to ask this question. And then I'm showing in myself hey, for the most part, I was moving pretty well during my squat cycle. Look at my training. And so, when I'm done, I didn't do any stretching or, traditional mobility work during the course of it. I did do some stabilization and other stuff, or some movement drills, maybe to, warm up before training and things like that. But I'm not super tight, where a lot of people think if you're 1,000-pound squatter, you're just going to be super tight. You're not even going to be, and so I think it's a great opportunity for me to show that is all I'm saying, and get people to go, hey, it's okay to do this stuff. And we need to do it. If you need to do it, you need to do it. And it's good. And if it feels good, go ahead and do it. If you love stretching's great. Go do it. There's nothing bad about it at all. And I'm not saying not to do it, but if you have to do it, if I have to see my physical therapist, if I have to see my chiropractor as the only answer, it means you're doing something wrong in your training in your life.
Agreed. It's always a better plan, I think, to chase the cause, not the symptoms.
Sorry, can I add something?
That's the whole point, is chase the root cause. That's all I'm saying.
I can agree with most of the things that you're saying. I do think that it's a gray area and kind of a thin line to be able to determine objectively whether or not someone's moving correctly or incorrectly.
Absolutely. That's the problem, because you could look like you're moving well,
yes, and maybe you're
not.
And
when I say move well, literally nobody has any idea what I'm saying.
Exactly.
So there's some context to that. I feel okay saying that because I've got a whole website based on helping people and educating them.
Of course. No. And I know that. It's just, it's something I wanted to clarify. Obviously there's instances.
I agree 100%. And it's very good that you're stating this, because I don't want what I'm saying to be misinterpreted. And if it's just, and it's easy to not understand what I'm saying.
Of course. Obviously, there's instances of when it's so obvious when you watch someone and they move wrong, you cannot even control your facial expressions. Like when I see Alex deadlifting, my face, and I'm sorry for the people in the box who can't see my face right now, my face just goes like this. And I can't physically control it.
Just roasting him like that.
Huh?
Roasting Alex in public like that.
Nah, he knows it. Alex, I love you, buddy. But when someone's moving wrong, you just know. And that person knows, and everyone around knows, right? But there are instances where people are moving seemingly well.
Yes.
That they still might be compromising their mobility. They still might be having unequal distribution of forces, putting more strain on one structure versus another one, creating compensations.
Their tempo could be causing stress in certain areas, like weightlifters,
loss of tension, etc.
And this is a great opportunity too, to also go see your physical therapist, your chiropractor, or whoever your clinical person is, to help you in that root cause analysis and trying to figure out, hey, so the answer isn't here's the mobility WOD that I need you doing every day, but also, hey, let's try to figure out what's going wrong. In your movement, you're not inflating your obliques and getting really good, you're missing this gap in the stabilization process. That's fine. and they have no idea. When I say move well, yeah, it means that. But people aren't going to understand that. And, that's a very important piece. So that's why I keep saying, I'm not saying don't use those things or that they're bad or anything. Like they're all like, I do it on a regular basis. I've got an in-house chiro, I've got an in-house massage therapist, and I try to stay on top of that wherever I can. Because
you also
nobody moves perfectly to begin with, like
except for me. I'm kidding.
No, but you make a good point there where I feel like the lines between chiro, PT, and coach have become so blurred now that you can use any one of those who are well educated in the subject matter to help you address those issues, those causes before they become issues that cause symptoms.
Yeah, and also, I mean, pardon my French, but fuck the credentials too. I can name so many people who have no credentials and also know exactly what they're talking about.
Absolutely.
I have no credentials.
Exactly.
So,
yeah.
And I've done a lot of clinical continuing education, but I have no actual degrees I do have some other certifications and stuff, but I don't want to mention, it's just, yeah.
No, but there's a reason why people look to you as a credible source of information. And it's exactly what you're saying. And those lines have become so blurred between all those different professions. And I think for a good reason. And everything's so open source now, you don't have to sign up for 20 chiropractor visits to get something fixed. You can go on Instagram and listen to a credible source who will help you identify causes and avoid issues before they become real issues.
Mm-hmm. I also want to add something. Now that we're in the topic of mobility, this is a conversation I had recently with someone else on someone else's podcast. But, I was talking and thinking about how I've viewed my training and how I've organized it over the years. And I think one thing that I've done differently that I think a lot of powerlifters and weightlifters could take some notes on is not only periodizing load, but periodizing your GPP, and within that is including your mobility work, just anything that makes you look and move like a human. Because people just take the off season to fuck off and whatever and do other things, or maybe maybe just lift lighter. When in reality, it's not only mobility, but you could be doing movements and exercises that help you find deeper positions, that help you strengthen deeper positions, and that help you move better. And it could be as simple as hitting a baseball bat, or punching a bag, or doing some jumps on a box, or sprinting. It could be anything that makes you look and move more human.
It's really interesting. And I think you just had Kelly Starrett on your last one. I absolutely love Kelly. I highly recommend his mobility, or now it's the Ready State. But incredible stuff. Kelly's helped me many times. Actually, he's been an incredible resource. Anytime I've been in these projects, he's like watching me and he'll message me, "Hey man, check out, you need to look at this. What about your left leg?" And so he's absolutely fabulous. And that's why I said, I'm not an anti any of these things. All I'm trying to do is tell people is to get them to look a little bit deeper. But your comment on periodizing,
periodizing.
Can't speak this morning. GPP and your mobility or movement work is really important, because there's a lot of things you can actually tailor your strength training movements even to put you in the positions where you're actually getting that stress, or you're getting that engagement of the patterning. And there's so many things, because it's except I could do an explosive med ball throw right from the one side to the other. So I'm working this whole oblique sling, throwing, getting GPP work in, but I'm actually doing some incredible core activation, working the shoulder complex through, depending on how I'm set up on the floor. I could be in a half kneeling or standing position, what's going on in the hips. Like, there's so many things. Like, I was doing some lat work yesterday to maintain my mobility. Instead of doing a lat pull down, I like getting on the machine. I do a half kneeling position and I let it do a full pull all the way across to really open up those oblique slings. So every one is nice stretch, and then I pull down in. There's so many ways that you can play with this stuff and incorporate it and actually be moving. Your thought process there is absolutely phenomenal. And so many people don't think down that line. It's like, here's my basic strength stuff and here's my mobility things. And particularly, I wrote this piece on GPP periodization like about 10 years ago, where I did like 6-week cycles, where you'd ramp up your GPP and then taper it back down and so on. And a lot of people don't, it's just like, I need to do conditioning work at a set limit, periodization of movement and it is something really people kind of miss a lot. I mean, obviously we do it in strength blocks when we're changing movements, or not everybody does it, but it's a pretty standard approach. And, but you can start playing with it with your accessories and then incorporating that into what you're doing with your mobility work. Cause a lot of it can be cross-played and you can get in the same positions. I mean, it's just like, I could do a bird, you could do bird dogs, but you could do a bird dog dumbbell row, right? Which I think that's one of my favorites. Really lowers the weight that you've got to do for your lat, but your core stabilization that's got to go across from opposite, hand to knee when you've got your, we call it a quadruped row, but I've seen other people put them up lately and call it a bird dog row. Just so many ways that you can play with this stuff. And again, it actually lowers a lot of times the weight. So like in our current environment, this is one of the things I think people should really be looking at, because you don't need as heavy of a barbell or a dumbbell in your hand to be doing this stuff, because a lot of it makes it way more challenging. And yet you're moving forward and progressing and maybe addressing some of those issues that you need to.
Mm-hmm.
It's also nice to not have to lift heavy all the time too.
Yeah.
So I think that's an added benefit.
Yeah, that's something that actually Jordan Shallow says a lot. It's about making an exercise subjectively more difficult instead of objectively in some instances. It's not only about the amount of weight that you're moving, but how you're moving and how it feels to you.
Yeah, absolutely. That's like even sometimes just having a squat workout. If I don't feel like having to go super heavy, in reps with low bar, maybe I can, still challenge myself and do high bar and sleeves and not have to, put 700 pounds on my back,
Exactly.
So yeah, I definitely see the value in that for many reasons.
What else you got there, Hayden?
I mean, I'm just curious what's the future look like for you and Kabuki? And I know you got a bunch of projects on the go. So we've talked a lot about the training aspect of things, but professionally, what's on the horizon for you?
Yeah. So last time we talked a lot about shoes and barefoot athletics, which we're going to be launching some new styles and stuff like that. And excited about that. Kabuki, we're going to continue working on expanding our line of biomechanically appropriate tools, I guess you would call it, but things that are trying to get us in better positions and accommodate for variability in lifter to lifter instead of trying to shove us all into this same, platform. So a lot of it isn't necessarily powerlifting specific, but it's going to be a lot more for strength and development for athleticism as a whole, because we work with, we're in every every professional sport in North America right now. And so there's a lot of things that when you walk into a weight room with the tools that they're using, that when you're putting all these different people, different sizes, different heights, different, different limb lengths, different mobility capabilities, all this in place and trying to shove them through the same thing, it's an opportunity for improvement. And we see that with our current barbell line. And I'd like to start advancing that into more of our things, racking and machines and things like that out there. So it's a big project, and I've got most of it, at least visualized in my head. Hasn't gone into the engineering queue yet, but over the next 4 or 5 years, you're going to start seeing things really start coming into play in that area. A lot of it's going to be focused around maximizing space as well, being very modular. So not necessarily good stuff for large commercial gyms, but more of like your independent training studio or, again, collegiate or professional sports where you've got to have multitudes of them. So the more that we can maximize space, the more return that we can get for, the gym owner from the space that they've got to work with, the more athletes that they can have work through a given piece of equipment at the same time, if it's able to adapt and change really fast. So I can't give you much based on theory at this point.
That was my next question. How top secret is everything? But it's interesting that you talk about the racking, because I've seen you use the combo rack in a very unique way. And, maybe that's something down the road, I don't know, that you're looking at.
I would like to see something like that hit the market at some point, but in a safer mechanism. That's why we don't sell a kit that adapts those, because honestly, I think that there's a risk for injury. If you watch my lifts, I've got an incredibly talented spotter crew that's well trained.
Yeah, you need it for that.
And so, but I think that there's still some advantage of getting that monolift type function into a small like combo rack. So yeah, that is definitely on deck, particularly especially in the sporting world where they're still using a lot of bands and chains and stuff like that for some of their athletes. You try to walk back with bands on you, and that can get that doesn't work very well.
Yeah, it gets a little dicey.
So I think that there's some good application for something that has that kind of mechanism built into it, without a doubt. So yeah, that is in the lineup for sure. But not having the big giant monstrosity of what a current monolift is. So I really want to make small modular functional pieces of equipment that can rapidly accommodate. So like a combo lift is a great idea, right? And people don't use it outside of powerlifting. But it's actually, you can run a lot of people through a combo rack and move the racks in and out and up and down and all this stuff. Like that's kind of what I'm talking about, right? But we haven't really taken that to these other areas. You don't see that getting used, in other athletic development. And so you walk in and you see people like one person squatting off their toes, some person doing a quarter squat to get it out, people not able to put their hands in the right spot. And there's 75 of them in the room doing this, right? Because they've got to adjust, organize them by the amount of weight that they're able to put on the bar, not those things that are actually really improvement from a movement, a movement setup, or they're not getting set up for success to start with, right? And so that's what I want to be able to do, is set up our athletes for success to begin with. Yeah.
I actually have a question that I forgot I wanted to ask. Can we briefly touch on velocity-based training?
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know much about it actually, and I've been curious and maybe wanted to implement it on my training.
Yeah. So I started doing this probably around 2010. And at the time, velocity-based training was all about speed training, like on a conjugate speed day, right? And I wanted to go a different approach because I found that 50%, weight done really, really fast didn't really play over well for strength development for me. And a lot of times, a lot of athletes were really sloppy when they were focused on being so fast with light weight. Mm-hmm. And so started using it more as an auto-regulation tool. And that's where I really feel the money is having it be an auto-regulation tool that is providing objective data, not subjective data. So basically we use it in a fashion that's kind of similar to an RPE, except there's no lying, there's no figuring it out. Now, there's a little bit of caveat before I get in here, and that is there's a couple populations it doesn't work well for. One of those being new inexperienced lifters. If you have a lot of variability in your movement from rep to rep, set to set, the velocities numbers are going to be all over the place. And it's not going to be a very useful tool in that regard. The other is you've got to put effort behind it. So you actually have to try. So a lot of times we call it effort-based training because you can sandbag it if you just don't try hard. Sure. You can do that with any training, right? So what we do is we start with what we call a profiling session. So we work an athlete on whatever lifts that we we feel are important. And so we work them through their, all the way up to like close to a max. And from that, we're able to create a linear regression line, not to be uncomplicate terminology, a sloped line that shows at 75% you're at this speed, at 80% you're at this speed. and so on. So now I can pick any percentage of your max and know what the velocity would be. So if I want to know 77%, it should be this speed, right? That's why we graph it onto a line. And then now we work it in reverse. So instead of saying in today's session, whatever your plan is, we're hoping to have 12 reps at the 80 to 85% range. Okay. And you would come up with this in a standard training protocol, right? You're doing some periodization and hey, here in this block, I need, my intensity is 85 to 90%. Here's how many reps I wanted to get. So it's, let's say 3 sets of 4 is going to get me my 12 reps at 85 to 90%. So now we program it based on the velocity. I want 12 reps, 3 sets of 4 at 0.30 to 0.35 meters per second, because that would be the same percentage. So it's basically percentage-based training. So you manage it exactly like percentage-based training. So your training programs is exactly what you're doing right now, okay? Except we replace percentage with the velocity. Now what that does is it actually allows you, your training plan is going to move, because your max is not actually, it is going to be varying, and it's going to be either progressing faster than plan, to plan, or slower than plan. And then you're going to have other factors, life factors kick in. Your dog's sick and was up puking all night. Okay. Didn't sleep well. Okay. So now you're going to try to hit those reps in that velocity range. If you're progressing faster than plan, you're actually going to train with more weight than what your percentage plan would place on, but you're actually training with your actual daily max without actually having to calculate it out or know it. If the dog was sick, or you guys were enjoying too many margaritas on the boat, you're not going to be able to hit as much weight. So to be in that same, so it's automatically going to adjust. So if everything's going to plan, you're going to be using the same weights as normal. Or you're going to have, here's the beauty of it. Everybody thinks about autoregulation as pulling back. What we find is there's lots of micro opportunities to take advantage of over the course of a training cycle that you weren't aware of. Because guess what? When you're training an 85 to 90%, like for me, 850 pound squat, guess what? It's heavy. Okay. And if I was doing percentage plan, it says I'm supposed to do 850. It's going to be heavy, and I'm going to do my 3 sets of 4. I'm not going to know that I could have trained with 855, maybe 860 that day. Okay. Or you're going to get to your third set, and you're like, man, I'm only going to do a double. I'm going to be smart. I'm auto-regulating. It just doesn't feel good today. If you got the data there, you're going to go, oh, no, actually, it's all there. I need to go for it. I need to not pull back. So a lot of times you look at the velocity device and you're like hoping it's going to, and you're like, God, fuck you, velocity device. I got to do the extra work. There's no excuse today. So it's really taking advantage of a lot of micro opportunities there.
I love that so much.
I love that it's got an auto regulatory part to it, but it kind of eliminates the subjectivity of RPE. So exactly. It's kind of like the best of both worlds.
RPE works. Some people it doesn't work as well for, like me, ego lifters. It doesn't. But even if it did, that might be an RPE 8, right, or an 8.5, whatever it is. Well, 860, what's that? An RPE 8.6? You don't have that level of refinement to know 5 pounds, 7 pounds here. You don't. It's not. 850 feels heavy. I can't differentiate the feeling between 850 and 855 or 860. But if I get the work in and I'm going to see the results of it. And so over the course of a training cycle, we find that our athletes end up doing a lot, progressing further or pushing a lot farther than you would expect. And we always think about auto-regulation a lot of times as the pullback thing. And it's going to do that too. Like I gave some examples there where you're just not going to do it. Now, the first question we ask ourselves when we, if the weight, so we'll also with our training logs, it pulls the data and says, hey, last time you trained, here's the number and this is where we expect. So I'm expecting you to lift the weights between 840 to 850 today is your window, right? And now I lost my train of thought.
That happens to me all the time.
So yeah, I'm supposed to be hitting somewhere between 840 to 850. That's the plan. Shit, I was hoping my thought would come back by then. Okay.
When you repeat the sentence. So what do you use to track the velocity? Like, is there a particular app?
Oh, good question.
How do you do it?
So there's a lot of products out there. So the visual apps, they're no good because it's guessing how far away you are and other stuff. It's not going to be accurate enough to work. There's a lot of gyroscope type technology. We've tested nearly everyone on the market because people know who we are and they send them to us. And they're not accurate enough in the ranges that we train as strength athletes. For like team sport athletes where you're training at a much higher velocity, it's okay. But we need to be within a 5% window. Like, I don't want to be training with 80% when I was expecting to be training with 90%, right? So we pick like I said, usually it's an 85 to 90 or 90 to 95. We use a 5% window. They're just not accurate enough. So you need a tethered unit to be successful, or there is going to be a new one that hits the market this year from GymAware that uses a laser and a gyroscope. And that we have been testing, and it's showing really positive. And it's just a little magnet you stick on the barbell, and then it shows up on your phone or iPad or whatever, what your velocity is as you're going. So yeah, it's an incredible tool. So it doesn't, like I said, it doesn't work great for people with a lot of, different, not very qualified lifters. They've got a lot of variability in their movement. And then it does work really well also for me or anybody else that's a very ego-driven lifter to make sure that's why I started using it, to make sure I'm staying within the range and not pushing it too far. Same time, I still found that a lot of times it was still over the course of a training cycle, I was able to take advantage of so many opportunities to add a little weight or finish a set that I didn't think. And yeah, it ends up being very beneficial in that manner.
I've always said that that's something that prevents a lot of lifters from making progress. How strict they are about sticking to a plan or a percentage or an RPE. That they don't take those small opportunities within a training cycle to actually push themselves. Mm-hmm. I think people make that mistake more often than the opposite. Like people, if you're feeling, how many times have you seen people at the gym that are going for, 90%, 3 sets of 1, and they absolutely smoke it. Like, it's obvious that they'll be able to hit a PR that day. Yeah. And they just go, oh no, my coach is going to kill me.
Yeah.
I'm like, if I was your coach, I would kill you for not going for the PR.
Yeah. And this allows you, but you have to put in the effort. That was where I was going with the 840 to 850. Let's say I get up and I'm getting close to the range. I'm getting to and I hit 800 and it actually falls within the range. I'm supposed to be training at 840 to 850. And I'm like, well, crap, I guess I'm just beat up and I don't know it. But yeah, the first question that we always ask is, are you trying hard enough? Because it is effort-based. And it's like, no, I need to go back and try harder first. That's the first thing that I need to do. And then all of a sudden you'll find, oh no, it is there. I just wasn't trying hard enough. Now the velocity comes up. So that's we call it effort-based training, because you really got to put in the effort to make it happen. But that's actually a really good quality though. Like to force you to go, oh no, I'm just not trying hard enough today. Mm-hmm. Like I just need to try harder and I can actually get my work in. And so that's those are kind of some of the principles there. But yeah, we found it really incredible value, and we're not changing. So it's, when people say velocity-based training, they think it's like some other type of training protocol. We're going to no, we use it as it is your system for, training. We're just going to overlay this as an objective indicator. And we still use subjective indicators too, as a whole. You could use RPE. We just use like a 1 through 5, as a whole. And a lot of times, and then we still use, again, because just not having to train people for RPE and stuff. Like we'll use reps in reserve for like all our accessory work and things like that. But the core things that we want to manage, if we have the opportunity. Now, it does vary a little bit for like somebody that's really pushing something at an elite level. So like, hey, Steph, if you're going for a world record exact number, it needs to be 572 pounds at this meet on this day. You just have to do the work. So we would still lay that out as a traditional training plan to get there. And you got to do it, because if you don't do it, you're not going to hit that goal. And if you're just trying to manage and take advantage of everything that you got in that training process, and you come in and it tapers everything back because you're actually progressing less than planned, and you hit 560, it doesn't matter what was the point of showing up, because that's the only thing at this point that is going to matter to some of those athletes at that level, right? And so we may not use that with some of the really high. I still use it myself, even though like, hey, my plan is to hit 1,000 for a triple next year. This is the plan. But I'm still managing some of those microcycles, and we're evaluating, but it's not necessarily a needed tool when you're getting to those final stages. Because if I don't hit this workout at this level, I'm not going to hit this goal at the meet, right? So there's a little bit of variability there, but as a whole, it's an incredibly valuable tool once you understand how to use that. We have a free velocity profiling tool on our website too. So if people just type in Autoregulation Book of Methods on Google, it'll go straight to an article that actually lays all this out and actually talks about the history of RPE and all the other subjective measures. And then it's got a download in there about halfway through when it's talking about it. You can download that and actually input your numbers, and it'll create that for you. So really, really cool stuff. So we've been playing around with velocity as an auto-regulation tool longer than anybody else that I know, because it was all used for speed work. How do I be faster? And it's kind of interesting. Like, again, looking at that, when I watch teams that go use it as a how do I be faster tool, you got to be careful what you want, what you measure, right? What you measure and what you're asking for. Because you say, hey, I want people to, you've got this group of basketball players deadlifting, and they're doing 225, and I'm doing VBT, and I want you to be faster. Well, next thing you know, you'll find people are deadlifting and ending up on their toes or doing a little bit of a high pull at the top. They're not doing a deadlift anymore, because the goal for them isn't to move more weight. So our goal with ours is, if the numbers are within a range, I actually get to add more weight, and that's the goal. But if I'm measuring it and I just want to be faster, there's a lot of ways you can actually move worse or not the way that we want, or kind of micro change the exercise. So I'm getting a higher velocity reading and doing better, because the goal isn't to add more weight. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. Talking about data, do you use any sort of HRV tracking tool? Do you buy into that? I have
in the past, and I need to get back onto it. My friend, if you want to talk HRV, I would highly recommend getting Joel Jameson on your podcast. So Joel is my go-to resource there, and I need to get back actually with what I'm currently doing. It's just really interesting. When I was overlaying autoregulation and HRV in the past, when you're in pure strength training, and you've got a lot of controls of other factors in your life, because I don't have to mix a different job or other things in, but it wasn't telling me to do anything different than what I was doing. But this was last time I really used it was kind of when it was really in the development. So I don't know how much it's changed. That's why I need to get in and use some of Joel's Bioforce, his new stuff, and play with that some more. But what I found is it would say, hey, you're building up and you've got a lot of fatigue, and you need to take some time off. And I was like, well, that's the block of training I'm in. I'm supposed to be doing this. So like, I'm not going to do anything different. So it wasn't driving me to take action at the time. And, but I had other tools to rely on as well. So
I think as long as you look at it like that, as one of many tools you can use to help you make educated decisions about your training, then it's beneficial. But the same, with anything, you shouldn't dive wholly into it. If you feel great one day and things telling you to take a rest, then
especially like athletes that are using strength training, GPP or whatever to support then yet another sport as well, and you've got all these overlaying stuff, like that gets really complicated to manage and know where you're at. And so I see an incredible value in the tool as a whole for a lot of people, or even people like that are just doing strength and conditioning, like let's say CrossFit and stuff like that. Like, man, HRV would be huge. Joel does it a lot in the fighting world. Again, you've got a sport that's highly physically demanding, but then you got to support that, you've got all the, other conditioning work, other strength training work as a whole, right? How do you manage, all those factors? And you may have different coaches for different ones too, that don't know what you're doing in those other areas. So having an HRV, I think is really cool. I've played with it, but it's been so long. I don't want to speak to it myself, but Joel is, anybody that's listening, Joel Jameson is definitely the go-to person.
Yeah, I would love to have him on the podcast. And for the listeners who don't know what HRV is and what Joel Jameson does, he basically dedicated his entire life to
so
researching.
I can tell people what HRV is and the science behind it. So HRV is heart rate variability. Okay. And so it's not your actual heart, like hey, I'm beating at 60 beats a minute. You're not actually beating at whatever in a micro level, beating what you measure for a minute. So it may be 62, 58, 67. It's bouncing all over the place, moving around. And so it's really showing you've got these two different things pulling. You got, people think about the sympathetic and parasympathetic states as like a complete shift, and they're not, like, right? They're constantly pulling one way or the other. And so that pull is what's creating the variability in your heart rate. And so heart rate variability is taking a statistical analysis, and they use a standard deviation. Then they measure the standard deviation of the variability in that heart rate, and basically finds out whether it's how hard you're trying to push or pull between those two areas. And if they're really fighting each other, that's where it's showing that you're accumulating a lot of fatigue in your system, basically, right? And whether you need to take a break or not. Now, the taking a break or not thing is really based on your training plan and where you're at, but it shows you what the response to that training is, so you can make those adjustments as needed. Like I said, so if I was in that final, like if I'm 2 weeks out from a competition, that heart rate variability is going to show really, really bad. You need to take a break, but you may have one more training session in there. You're still going to take it because that's part of, you're actually trying to build that. But then you should also see now that change and come into a positive the closer you get to a meet. So it can really show you, hey, is my training plan, is my deload in the appropriate phase? Am I getting fully recovered for a meet? Or now am I starting to, did I peak too early, too late? So there's tons of great stuff there once you understand what it is. So heart rate variability, again, it's just measuring the standard deviation of the changes in your heart rate to find out how the sympathetic and parasympathetic parts of your nervous system are working, and where your actual fatigue and recovery is and needs are.
Yeah, that's perfect explanation. I actually gave a lecture on heart rate variability a few years ago, and one of the things that I wanted to hammer in the most was that it's not only about gathering data, but about understanding how to interpret the data. And that's exactly what you were saying, and
that's where I found, like, when I was playing around with it, like, God, it was 8 to 12-ish years ago, the interpretation pieces, the stuff they were using, just wasn't giving me, it wasn't developed enough yet. And I know that it has. Like, I've been in Joel's office, and he was showing me all the stuff and the data on with our athletes. I'm really impressed with what he's doing. I just haven't implemented it, and I really like to use stuff before I speak to it.
Of course.
Speak to it.
Did he end up launching Morphus?
What's that?
Did he end up launching Morphus?
Yes, he. Last I talked to him, I believe it should be launched now. He had some supply chain issues, basically, with getting the tools.
I could never order it; it was always sold out.
Yeah.
Hey, if you can put me in touch with Joel, that would be amazing. I seriously would love to.
I'll shoot you over his email and his phone number.
Yep. Awesome.
Awesome. Anything you want to plug before we get off here?
There's always a million things to plug. Got some really phenomenal products that are going to be hitting the market this year with Build Fast Formula, supplement line that, anyway, we've done some really cool stuff and I'm really excited for what's coming out. Kabuki Strength, we've got, if you're not familiar with what we're doing, just go to the website, check us out, kabukistrength.com. We've got, I believe, the industry best tools in the areas that we play in, without a doubt. And they help people get stronger and reducing the potentiation for injury. I'm not going to say eliminate an injury, like that's just a bad statement. But really check that out. And then my book. So if we want to talk inspiration, goal setting, effective goal setting and how to put that in place in your life so it'll affect your business, family, all these sorts of things. It's a bestseller in a number of different categories for that reason. So you can find links to all this stuff on my personal website, and which includes a free audio download of my book and another book if you sign up through the link on that site. So just ChristopherDuffin.com. So pretty easy to find, ChristopHer, Duffin, D-U, like muffin, but with a D, .com. I really encourage people to check out the book. It has, in my tagline and all my posts says life changing, which I think sounds over the top, but you would be surprised at how many people's life it is turned around, helped people with addiction issues, recovering from mental health. It's saved some people from suicide. Like it's really impacted people in a positive manner. And I think that anybody that's in training, I'd have trouble finding anybody that wouldn't find some value in it. So check it out. The Eagle and the Dragon. You can find it on Amazon or just Barnes and Noble or wherever as well. But all of it's housed on my personal website. There's links to that. Build Fast, Barefoot, and Kabuki Strength.
That's amazing,
Awesome.
Chris. You're an inspiration for me, and I admire you so much as a professional, as an athlete, and as a human being. You're the full package, the real deal.
Well, thank you. That means a lot.
Of course.
Appreciate you coming on, and we'll have to do round 3 at some point.